Hi there, and welcome to the Outcomes Over Hours show. I'm Tina Patterson, and I'm really excited with who I'll be interviewing today. Bertrand is someone who has deep expertise, and particularly in the areas of information, cyber, and risk. He's currently the CISO, the Chief Information Security Officer at Transurban, and has global responsibilities in this space. The reason that I really wanted to interview Andre, there was a couple of reasons. One, he's a client, he's a friend, an all-round great guy, but from a leadership standpoint, Andre is one of the most unflappable leaders I've ever seen. He's able to stay calm no matter what's going on and really focus on the outcomes and the things that need to be done, as opposed to getting caught up in the drama of things that are going on. So Andre, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Tina, and lovely to be here.
Fantastic. Well, I'd love to start off talking about your own leadership style and how it has changed. If you think about from before the pandemic, during the pandemic, and after the pandemic, how has your own leadership style changed during this time?
Yeah, and great question there. So certainly, I guess my leadership style overall very much around empowering people. And while that might be a generic term out there, it's very much I'm looking to work with the best people that we can and really empower them to do the roles that they're there to do. So I'm not one to be in there with the micromanagement and with the scope and size of the roles that we typically that we see as a CISO. It's almost impossible anyway. So really from prior to the pandemic, I guess, if you're looking about how the organizations that I was involved with and are involved with ran with very much, 4 to 5 days minimum in the office. There was a lot of face time, a lot of that water cooler type catch-ups, hard to get a meeting room type of thing, and very much people would all sit in the same area. So you had easy access to people, you had a good understanding of where they were and more access to their personal lives. I guess, you could probably lean on the more foundational cultural elements of the whole organization rather than having to build anything really for yourself. Pandemic came, I was 3 months into the role, so I only had a couple of months really with the team. And then suddenly we're all working from home, and being from Melbourne in Australia, we had obviously, quite impactful and lengthy lockdowns. That was really obviously, having to really go back to basics around, that empowerment of the team. And I'm really lucky to have a great leadership team in that space. And going through that whole period, and, it was over 2 years that we really were impacted. We really had to take a step back, both as an organization, both as a technology group, but also as a cyber group. One of the things that we certainly felt worked was really trying to understand in this world of virtual conversations around where people were doing well and where they weren't. And it was very difficult because you were suddenly transported into people's homes. That you could see the stress, and certainly with people who had family or didn't have, or were isolated from their loved ones. You could see there was a lot of stress that was being placed on people, and for a long period of time. And of course, I think from all the psychology out there, you can see that takes a bearing on humans. And we had to really deal with that. And I would put my hand up and say that I was certainly impacted by that. So we really had to take a step back and understand what we could do in those types of situations, and understand what sort of performance we could expect, and really start to see where people were potentially doing well, and we had some really good productivity outcomes, but really where people would need to take a step back, try and step away from the day-to-day. And the unfortunate, I guess, side effect of pandemic, where people were either expecting or were taking on more of a role that was outside of traditional business hours, and playing into their family time. So with all of those things in place, we really had to make sure that we were leaning on our mental health partners as well, and trying to pick through the best we can all those pressures and see how they're playing out in the team. Obviously, coming back into the office, was both refreshing and exciting to meet with people. We, like a lot of organisations, we had our own turnover during that period, and really what that meant is that a lot of people we'd never met before, and of course, we always joke is that you can always meet to see people, but you never really realize how high, what their height was, and so that you kind of get through out. thrown out in that regard. But really, to get to meet people again, to have those coffee moments, to have a bit more understanding about what's happening, and having those the ability to build teams, really, I feel is a great opportunity. But we're not going to go back to those 5 days a week, and the expectations around travel is certainly different as well. So we're playing into that. The fact is both myself and the rest of the team both enjoy, having the flexibility to be in the office, to do those pieces where we need to come in and solve problems together and have that team building and communication. And then there's times where we need a bit more focused time, and we can use working from not only home but other locations to enable that.
Yeah, I love that, Andrea, being really, really clear of there are some things, depending on the team, that are better in the office when you are, be it the team building or collaboration, and then times where it's up to the individual. I love that you've differentiated and distinguished between the two of them. I'd love to come back to something you mentioned, because it's something I've seen you do really well as well, which is around how you empower your team. And I think a big part of leading in our new normal, empowerment has to be there for it to really succeed. Can you just talk a little bit more about any specific examples that come to mind of how you go about doing this that might inspire other leaders to feel comfortable to empower their own teams?
Yeah, and I think Tina, it's an interesting point, because if you go back to even the very start, when you're considering the role, whether it's someone's left, or you're creating something new, new structure, you've got to really make sure that you're going through and looking at that, position description, and really understanding what do you want from this role? What is it going to take for this to work, both as an individual, as a team member, as a leader, and as someone who's part of a broader organization? And then really making sure that as you go through that process of finding the right person, of then going, you kind of hired them for a reason, and trying to, and I think, potentially, and I put my hand up on this one as well, is that, you've got areas of expertise, you've got your own passions in the industry that you're in. And it's sometimes very easy to, potentially come over the top of someone, especially as they're developing into the role and they're building their own team and repertoire. So I think it's, it's very, it's always, it's a real opportunity for people to, take that step back, to let the conversations play out and provide the leadership potentially after, after a meeting, for example, so that we can actually have, you can actually have the ability to pass on feedback, for example, rather than being in there and trying to direct the conversation. So, from the other part of it is that you can't be across everything. The more senior that you get in the organisation, you can't possibly be across it and in the detail. And if you are, then you're not doing your own role.
Oh, that's such a great point. And I love also what you said of you hire people for a reason. I've seen you do that, of building a great leadership team, of taking the time to get the right people in the right roles. And then that gives you the comfort level to be able to empower them. Yeah, fantastic. I want to change gears a little bit. Do you have a morning ritual? And if so, what is it?
Well, I guess the morning ritual is that, the classic, it starts the night before with preparation. Hopefully you have the ability to look, the week ahead and understand what you do with the diaries like, and what the support that you need, and any preparation that is required. Like always, that needs to be reassessed the night before, or hopefully the afternoon before, so you can get into a position where you're confident about what you need to do and what the outcomes you need to do for that day, and certainly any team engagements that are required. So that's hopefully in a position to do that. So hopefully, because it's never perfect. I like to exercise, even if it's a relatively small amount. It helps me to get focus for the day, and then it's straight back into the maelstrom of the household and get the kids out the door. And then once you've done all of those things, and had opportunities to do the last minutes, then you can get back into the office, or into your own home office, or out on the road.
Fantastic. And given we are in this world of hybrid work now, you mentioned empowering teams, but what are other skills that you think, just a couple of them, that you think that leaders really need to lean into in this hybrid world, as opposed to being able to see their people in the office every day?
Well, I think, that's 4 or 5 days a week. 4 or 5 days in the office every week, which we had sort of pre-pandemic. Not having that, you had the inherent cultural aspects that meant. where people could come and they could either engage with you directly, or they could be in on those conversations, even overhearing them, as you were, just talking with your leadership team or talking with a wider group, and those sort of coaching opportunities that come out. Now, in this hybrid world, you need to make time for that. It doesn't go away. There's still a requirement to do that. Doesn't mean you have to do, you have to do it both either in the office. It can be done over a virtual aspect, but the reality is that I feel it's more important and impactful to be able to do that potentially in a one-to-one situation. With that in mind, it's then attracting people back into the office itself, and the reasons why people come into the office. Potentially people have got different locations where they're working from, or different expectations from their home life that they've built around their sort of pandemic timeframe. So, giving the opportunity for people to come back in, build it around some events where you can get that communication, you can get the outcomes that you do, rather than just a purely business as usual type operation. And then lastly, I'll just end on really what it is around that understanding those engagement points and ensuring that you're all clear, both for yourself and your team leaders, about what your expectations around those engagements are, whether that's a weekly catch up, whether that's a daily, depending on the type of role that you do.
Yeah, it's such a good point. And I hear a lot of my clients who say that exactly what you've just said, that it's even more important now to have, when you schedule a one-on-one, don't cancel it. If you can absolutely avoid it, because sometimes for your people, that could be the meeting they've been looking forward to most that week if they haven't actually seen you for a period of time. So yeah, it's really great advice. Another question for you. What is the most practical advice that you've been given around how you work smarter?
Well, I think we've had the discussion, Tina, around this, and it's very much around really understanding, first of all, around time management, and understanding where do you need to spend your time and how much time do you need to be doing. And I guess, to support that is then, are you the right person for that particular task or objective? Coming back to the empowerment piece, a lot of the time is that you're there to, connect the dots and ensure that you're getting the right level of performance to meet those particular objectives. So I think that, the other part of it also is about being really clear about where you're heading. And as part of that, having those conversations, which are sometimes difficult, which is around, that you can't do everything, and that here's where we're heading, and we're heading to this because of these reasons, and we've got people on board and engaged to that, but you can't respond to every request within the timeframes potentially that have been asked.
Yeah, I love that piece around, often we go straight from what we need to focus on to, well, it's got to be me. I love that distinction. It's one that I, as you know, talk about a lot of. Once you work out what needs to be done, the next question is who makes sense to do it? And it doesn't always land then on us. Often it is a great opportunity for someone else in the team. Fantastic. Well, I've got some rapid fire questions. Are you game to go for them?
Let's go, Tina.
Okay. What is the best purchase you've made in the last few years that was under about $100?
Oh, that is a good one. Well, I would normally, potentially a lot of people would say alcohol to get people through, but I guess on the other side of things, there's been a lot of good books that have been out there, and while I can't recall the exact one right here, I would say that's probably a learning one. But otherwise, with any purchases, it's probably been time that you could spend with your family. Ultimately, I think that's been good time, and considering we've been in such extreme circumstances, just the ability to do things that we took for granted, taking out a child or a partner or a friend out and spending that money with them, it's more valuable than that we appreciated before.
Yeah, I love that, based on the experiences. Now, you mentioned books. The next question is about books. What is the book that you have either recommended the most to others or given the most to others?
That's a really good question, and I don't have an answer because I haven't been reading recently on that one, but I'll have to give you a pass.
Okay, no worries. What about the most fearless thing you've done over recent years?
I'd say one of the most fearless thing is one, getting through what we just went through, but mainly is taking on what we've I've had to do personally with this organisation, and certainly take them on the journey and build the team to meet what we have what we've required. Had a as a very impactful and for some people worrying cyber incidents that have happened, and we need to be able to really build that capability. So that's really taken me to new spaces in terms of myself, in terms of what do we need, how do we put that in place, how do we have the organisation on the right path to be able to meet those particular challenges. And I found that challenging and exciting at the same time, but it's certainly outside of my my comfort zone.
Yeah, fantastic. And final question, what does outcomes over hours mean to you?
Well, there's probably some good practical examples of that, and I think having the team in place and the trust that entails, where people can ultimately we need to get to an outcome rather than seeing hours going into it, and it's a very much a there's going to be multiple paths to get there, and I don't always know the answer. A lot of the time I don't, but having the right team in place allows us to say, well, we're looking to get to an outcome. It's going to take work, but let's think about how we can get potentially multiple ways to that. I think those the cultural and even the generational aspect of having the coat on the back of the chair left over there late at night so that the boss sees it on the way out is over, because the reality is that you've got certain objectives that you need to hit, and there's lots of different ways to get to that. So empowering the team to be able to do that, and helping them and supporting them to get to that particular objective is much more valuable to me than rather than seeing someone burn the midnight oil.
Yeah, amazing. Well, Andre, thank you so much for being here today and sharing your wisdom and your leadership insights.
Thank you, Tina. Great to speak to you.